Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a book review for Dead Man's Hand by James Butcher. I have not put the cover back on yet. I'll do that in a minute, but we will be doing a general discussion about the book, characters, some spoilers, and our feelings about it, which were overall very positive. I really enjoyed this book, and I hope you guys will too. Dead Man's Hand is the first book in the Unorthodox Chronicles, and it came out earlier this month. I'd already heard about it a little bit, so I was excited for it. This book, though, follows two characters. One you see from their perspective a lot more than the other one. The other one is there, but you don't see through their eyes near as much. Our main character is Grimshaw Griswold Grimsby. Took a few tries, tongue twister there, because all of his names start with Gur. Yeah. Okay, Griswold, though, is Grimsby. Let's just call by last name because that's what most of the book does. Grimsby is a failed witch. He spent his whole life training to join the Department of Unorthodox Affairs, and it did not work out for him. It did not work out for him at all. And so now he works as a children's wizard. And it's just a job that's kind of awful, but he needs it to be able to pay rent. And you would say, well, why doesn't he just go get a normal job? But he spent his whole life training to achieve this thing. So yeah, that's what he's got his mind set on being, is, using his magic to be a witch. So that's why he doesn't get a normal job. He wasn't really trained to do anything else. He could still go do something, sure, but I don't think at the point that this book takes place is too long after he was not able to join the department. So he's probably would have eventually maybe found a better job. Our second character is Leslie Mayflower. He is a retired magic hunter of some sort that he did used to work with the department. And you meet him first in the prologue, and he is a very grumpy old character because, he's the one that's been through a lot, seen a lot, done a lot of struggles, lost things. Yeah, so he is the grump character through the story. He has good reasons, though, for being a grumpy old man, though it never actually talks about his age. So old is just, we're speculation on how old he is. I mean, he's definitely up there probably, but I wouldn't say old if he's still able to do the things he does. But through this, they form, this unlikely alliance, friendshipy thing. And yeah, they are a hoot to read together. So the book's actual description is a bit different. It talks about how the world is divided into usuals and unorthodox, which unorthodox are any sorts of magical creatures, peoples, because technically the witches that are part of this Department of Unorthodox Affairs, they're all witches generally. Sometimes they have non-witches at there, like our character Mayflower worked for the department, and he's not magical, but he is very well known as the Huntsman because that became his nickname as he hunted magically things. So the Department of Unorthodox Affairs, though, kind of is like the policing force for all of the unorthodox that are around the country that do magic, and keeping them from, general public, it's not general public knowledge, but general public awareness of how much or bad things are. Everybody knows about witches. Everybody knows kind of about magic. Like I said, he is a children's wizard at almost, not a Chuck E. Cheese, somewhere with a play place, though, that has dress-up character, I guess. I don't know the right describer for that, which is where the Taco Fairy comes in. Because, oh my gosh, I started this book on Tuesday, and that was just, it immediately connected me to this book because Taco Tuesday and meeting the Taco Fairy. As you know, he needs the job, so he swallows his pride and puts on the taco wings. Because yes, his boss made wings into tacos with glitter in the color of meat and seasonings. And back to the description though, side notes. Grimsby gets pulled in with the Department of Unorthodox Affairs, even though he'd already failed out of, being able to join them, because his old mentor is murdered, and he's kind of implicated in that murder. So he has to try to clear his name. How However, it's kind of complicated and there are other factors and forces that are also trying to get to Grimsby, just like the department. Thus how he forms this alliance with Mayflower to clear his name, because the person that was killed used to be Mayflower's partner before he retired. Nobody seems to agree that he's able to retire, but he considers himself retired and drinks all day. The prologue is actually you meet Mayflower first and somebody from the department comes to get him and be like, you need to come see this, this is bad. And that's how he found out his partner was murdered. The overall tone of the book though is a little dark because we do have murder and it is slightly detailed into what happened. Like he didn't shy away from that. And then again, most of the book takes place in dark places, spooky-ish places. So the tone's a little dark, but Grimsby's particular brand of snark and swearing, because his mother did not like swearing, so he has very unique things he says, like something happens and he shouts out puppy dog tails. So yeah, his brand of snark though brings a lot of humor to it, and it does definitely lightens the book. And when he's in tight spots or when he's scared, he is normally sarcastic and witty and just, he can't help it. It's like a nervous response to the bad situation. He explains to Mayflower at one point and he's like, well, I don't care, just stop talking. And yeah, so that was part of their bonding moments though. He eventually broke through to him and he's like, oh look, you laughed, you can laugh. This book though is definitely not, for younger readers. It's not because anything happens per se, except for the, grisly details of some things. But it is some things that are talked about that would be inappropriate. Early on even. This book is very, very fast paced. It takes place for the majority over like 2 days. And it's just, everything is happening. You might get like a little lull as, they're thinking things through or they're trying to find something in a particular place. But pretty much it's very, very fast paced. Things are happening. They're being attacked or they're figuring stuff out. And yeah, you're not going to want to really put it down because it will. It constantly keeps you engaged with every chapter. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And yeah, it's life or death stakes pretty much throughout the whole chapter. Even where he gets, to where something's not trying to kill him, he bumbles his way into apparently something else. Well, he didn't know, that it would be life or death at the start of it, but... And now, we should talk about some spoilers. That way I could get into some details without dancing around things. Skip forward if you don't want to watch this part. The first thing that is like a very big thing about why he is a failed magician, like the book description even talks about calling him a failed magician. And it's not so much that he is, like it's nothing he could have controlled. He works harder to learn spells and to do stuff to get into the department than most people that he's in a class with. He made it into the top 3 last candidates of that class to get into the department. But his trainer person who was like passing them at the end wrote him off as just a mediocre witch, not department material. And this is because, and you can't really tell though, they did a good job, with the artwork here. So when he was younger, there was a fire that actually killed his mother and left half of his left side severely burned. And due to this, it is very hard for him to control his magic, because the way the magic works in this one is that they summon up kind of like this spirit energy or whatever. They can feel it like within themselves. And if it goes too much to his left side, it leaks through his scars. Like he's literally losing so much of his potential and his magic because the magic is just seeping away from him. So he really has to try to concentrate and force it to his right side so that he can use it. But there's always some leakage. So it made it very hard for Grimsby to be able to even do basic spells. And like one of the things that the department, the bully, that had been in his class that he of course has to deal with later in the book of court as well, brings like, oh yeah, you couldn't even do a fireball. More like he couldn't mentally do the fireball because he has still this immense fear of fire. But you know, when you almost die in a fire at a young age and you lose your mom because of that and spend who knows how long in physical therapy and all this sorts of stuff, yeah, you're gonna have a fear of fire. That makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Another reason I think that he could have been a really, really strong witch is you need energy and stuff to be able to do magic. Like, it's like a physical exertion of your body. If you don't sleep, if you don't eat, you can't call your impetus. I think that's what they call their magic. They have a specific word for it. I think it was impetus. And you will have no spark. You will have no ability to really use it because your body is so weak and so drained. You've used too much. As I said, this place takes place over about 48 hours. In this time period, he never gets to eat. It's actually a little funny because he keeps almost getting to food like at least 2 times, and something happens and they were literally in the drive-thru and they drive away and he's just like looking back mournfully at the restaurant like, triple burger. I feel so bad for him. So in this time period, he doesn't get to eat. He barely gets to sleep, and yet he still keeps summoning his magic, The fact that he had the will and the ability to keep summoning it, even though it was diminished after so much of a point. And I feel like most people after that amount of time would not have been able to do that. So Grimsby, I feel like, has this really, really strong ability if only he could harness it better. If he didn't have to lose so much to his left side. I hope as the books continue, they will be able to do something to help him with that. Because, yeah, he has super potential, I think. Super, super potential. The book description is a little deceiving in what it talks about. His mentor is murdered. The witch that was murdered, that they're like super powerful. And yes, she is one of the most powerful witches that was around at the time and was like very big in the department and everything, very strong. She was not really his mentor. You might say she was his teacher, but she was the one that kept him from getting into the department when they were joining up. She was giving him his final tests. That's how he knew her. Of course, there was a little bit of a grudge because she's the one that wrote him off as like just a mediocre witch. Because he couldn't, control the spells. He couldn't do as much as the other 2 that were, eventually to get into the department. But because of how they find his name near her body, and it's not just a normal near her body either, it is very specific, weird way. And so they start to track him down, believe he did it. Her ex-partner, Mayflower, though, is the first one to actually notice what it says. And he goes after him, and he's intent on killing him because he's like, you kill my partner, I will get vengeance for her, even though he was retired. He's like, she was still my partner. It's still my job. Confronted for the first time with Mayflower, though, and his gun and his imposing figure, what does Grimsby do? Grimsby faints. Like, dead out faints. And then you switch back to Mayflower's perspective. And this is only the second time we've seen from Mayflower. And he's like looking down at Grimsby's fainted body. And he's like, this can't be the one that managed to kill her. It can't be. You just see his mental process and like just thinking, it doesn't really say his first impression of when Grimsby fainted, but I wish it would have, because it had to be like mind wiped, like what. So funny moments. This book is full of funny moments, intentional things said, and just what happens. The way the story is laid out, though, you see some things that don't get explained as much. Like, I feel like maybe at some point Grimsby's backstory might come into play through this series, because you were taken back to his childhood apartment where the fire took place, and of like all the places that the item they were looking for could have popped up, the fact that it's there, I don't know, it felt kind of important, but it never really played that off or anything. And also the fact that you find out that his department record file has been mostly redacted or locked down to where an IT person can't see it. And so I feel like, I don't know, there's something about Grimsby's past that might come up later that there's something there that it just feels like. The plot line of the story, though, is mostly straightforward. It does, veer in directions you wouldn't have seen it going, but that's good. That is very good for a book to do that, because then you can't automatically assume the ending. You can't figure out the whodunit from the get-go, and I like that aspect very much. I will say, though, there was 2 points in midway later chapters where there's like exact conversations that happen again, like that they've already happened once. And one time it was Grimsby even saying this, I think, to Wudge, or Grimsby saying it to Mayflower, I don't remember. So one time he was saying the information, like, okay, he knew this, and he's telling the other person about it. And then the same conversation pretty much happens later, except it's somebody else saying it to him, and he's acting like he didn't already know this information. It's a little weird, because it's not just like that there was a repetitive thing, which I know I brought up in other books, like I have the problem when they do have a repetitive feel to the story. This was like an exact conversation happened again for 2 separate topics. It was very odd. I don't get it. What happened in the epilogue really, really raised some questions about who did something before, and was the person involved in the creation of these that we thought was, or was it this other person? I don't know, but it will be a whole series, so we should get answers whenever he writes the next book. Dead Man's Hand was James Butcher's debut novel, and I feel like he did it really, really well. For a first novel, this went wonderfully. Were there a few issues? Yeah, but mostly the story was fine. The storyline went well. There was nothing wrong with that part. The characters were enjoyable. Overall, really enjoyed this book, and I hope a lot of people will pick it up, because, yes, if you like snarky characters, you're gonna love Grimsby, for sure. And his character growth through this book, I think, was phenomenal. He went from someone who was really down on himself and pretty much didn't consider himself good at anything anymore, and just going through life day to day, not even trying to do anything, just mostly going to work to make money to pay the rent. And he'd given up on a lot of things. He'd given up pretty much on having a life. That was all he did. But through this, he found out how strong he really was. And it took a while for him to find out. Other people were starting to see his true strength before he really accepted it. So I think a fantastical job with character growth and strength. Now, my rating for this book ended up being a 4.25. Yes, super enjoyable, good characters, good imagery of where we were and tone of the book. I enjoyed it so much. But yet again, I like snarky characters. They speak to me. So if you maybe don't like the snark as much, still try it anyway, because maybe Mayflower's character and just the plotline in general will draw you in, and you can ignore Grimsby's words. Hopefully you enjoyed the review for this book and you are considering now picking it up yourself as well. Or if you've already picked it up, I'd love to know what you liked about it, didn't like, general thoughts on it. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you guys are new here, hi, I'm Morgan. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I have other reviews, unboxings, general bookish videos for you guys to enjoy if you haven't seen them already. And if you're liking my videos, consider subscribing and joining us for the next ones. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.